Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of the Agency for Healthcare Administration's week-long webinar series for National Health IT Week. On behalf of the agency, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us this morning. My name is Chris Wilkie, and I'm the Health IT Outreach Specialist here at AHCA. I will be leading today's presentation, and just want to let everyone know before we start that we are recording the presentation today. So for those of you who might miss a part or want to re-watch, I will send the link out for the PowerPoint slides, as well as a link to the recording after the webinar today. So this week, like I said, we're celebrating National Health IT Week, and each day we are choosing to highlight a different area of HIT. There's a lot of different HIT initiatives taking place throughout Florida and the country. So today we are going to talk about the EHR Incentive Program and how it is promoting interoperability in the adoption of electronic health records throughout Florida. We have 2 guests on today. We have Kim Davis-Allen, who is the EHR Incentive Program Outreach Coordinator. And we also and I just want to say thanks for joining us this morning, Kim.
Yes, great. Thank you.
And we also have Paul Halucka, who is the Integration Solutions Engineer at Nemours Children's Hospital. Paul, thanks for being with us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me, and thanks to the agency for putting this together.
Yeah, sure thing. Paul, just before we get started with today's discussion, would you mind giving us just a little description of your role at Nemours as an Integration Solutions Engineer?
Absolutely. So my role has morphed as we've seen the change in the healthcare industry, as well as change in the meaningful use in the EHR Incentive Program. I came on board with the organization in 2015, and that was in a period of transition with the meaningful use program, and I did assume the administration of it at our organization. So at that time, I was focusing on our, modified stage 2 metrics at that time, as well as any projects that we had to get underway to get those measures satisfied at the organization. So along with meaningful use, I also work with our Health Information Exchange program at Nemours. We work with regional health information networks, such as Delaware Health Information Network and Florida HIE, which you'll hear a little bit more about later in the program, as well as Epic's Care Everywhere module, which is the interoperability module built inside the Epic application.
Excellent. We're very excited to have you on today's discussion. And before I hand the conversation over to Kim, I just want to let the audience know that we will reserve a couple minutes at the end for your questions. There are 2 ways you can ask them, either typing them in manually through the GoToWebinar control panel, or you can click raise hand and we'll be able to verbally take your question. On that note, I'm going to hand it over to you, Kim.
Okay, thanks so much, Chris, and thanks again, Paul, for being with us today. So you've already used the buzzword, interoperability, and that's, as Chris talked about, the EHR Incentive Program is kind of evolving and changing to really focus on the interoperability, not just having that electronic health record within your own system, but being able to take that information and share it outside your system as well. And Nemours is definitely a leader in that and a really good partner for a lot of our different initiatives. So you work within the Nemours system, and I think you said you've been there since 2015. Is that correct?
Yep, I started in 2015 as an analyst there, yes.
Okay, so kind of tell us how you have seen that evolve, just even in 3 short years from 2015, and then whatever experience you may have had before with the use of an electronic health record, and how it has really kind of grown more exponentially into this whole concept of interoperability.
So I guess in a short period of time, there's been a lot of change. So back in 2015, we were seeing a transition in the program from, I guess, the standard stage 2 rules to the modified stage 2 program rules. We saw more of a shift to, I guess, movement of information in some of those measures, whether it be from a provider's practice to another practice. So from Nemours, sending a summary of care to another practice, or also the movement of information from a patient to a provider. So we saw measures such as the use of the patient portal. My Nemours is our patient portal that we've had, where we are getting patients to sign up and really engage them with our providers. So the secure messaging measure was another big one. I think that really helped that change, where we're not only getting our patients to send these messages back, but also our providers too.
So one of the things that we often hear from meaningful use, and I think you just said it good, is it's a lot of standards that have to be met. Since 2011, when the program first started, there were certain things that providers were held to a standard to do. But I kind of agree with you. I think that having those standards out there, just like any other kind of program, has really shifted that focus to use of a patient portal, sharing that patient information, secure messaging between a provider's office and a patient as well. What do you find to be some of the other benefits of not only just having the electronic health records, but also maybe the whole Meaningful Use program as it's been rolled out?
Well, I think, tagging on to what you were just saying, we have these measures that are engaging the patients, and I think that's a huge part of the Meaningful Use program at its current state. We have these measures that we need providers to meet, but that's only half of the battle. We're not going to meet these measures, such as the patient portal and messaging, unless we have engagement by the patients. So I think that's part of the challenge sometimes, but it also provides a major benefit in the care to the patients if they are engaging with the providers and they can reach out and ask questions about their own healthcare journey. These are the things that we're able to do now that we weren't able to do previously with the program.
So patient engagement, I think, really is key, and I like the concept that you're talking about is you can do it to meet the measures, but it really has to kind of become what you do. That's a term I use quite often, and I've seen the program since 2011, even before with some of my previous work, health information exchange, use of electronic medical records, use of a patient portal, patient engagement. It's just becoming what we do. It's just how healthcare is now provided. But I know there's also probably been some roadblocks or some drawbacks along the way. So just as we've talked a little bit about the positive things, what do you see as some of the drawbacks kind of down this path?
Well, certainly, I'd say two things. The first thing is that same challenge of patient engagement, as well as the amount of data that we are now receiving through these funnels in the healthcare system. So some of our challenges initially are getting this engagement from patients, finding the value for patients on how they can message providers and how we can have that streamlined communication back and forth. And some of the scenarios that we had challenges with were some one-off clinic visits where patients are coming in and having a short relationship with the provider. So I was really finding the value for those patients on how that we can have that short messaging interaction or that patient portal interaction for those shorter visit and those shorter journey within our health system. I would also say, now that we have all of this engagement, that the providers do only have almost at times 15 minutes with the patient. So I think now that we are receiving all this information through interoperability and, we're having this engagement, whether it be information provided from a wearable to a provider, it's, how we're siphoning that important and most valuable data to get into the hands of the provider during those appointment windows.
And so within the Nemours system, you definitely have the hospital, you have clinics, you have, I guess I call it direct patient care. Within that system, and I know that y'all do a lot of work with a lot of emphasis on this, is it that short patient interaction where you find to be the most challenging, or do you see those patient engagements kind of challenging across all of the different systems that you manage?
I would say that I'm thinking the shorter relationships. So if we have somebody who might be, just stopping in for an urgent care visit, finding the value in how we can follow up better using the technology we have readily available. If there might be a patient who, again, is going to have a shorter relationship with our clinic just for a broken arm, for example. I think just finding some of the value in how we can use that messaging tool and really engage the patient to provide the better care is a little more challenging than, I'd say the frequent flyers, the patients that we are seeing over and over again. They're more easily to be engaged, I would say, with some of this technology.
So it sounds like you definitely use it in lots of different areas, lots of different patient opportunities, that sort of thing. But I know that you're also participating in some of our other HIE initiatives as well. And so kind of talk about how the two do tie together.
So we have a pretty, complex system of interoperability available through the technology that we use. First, we use a lot of functionality, interoperability related through our Care Everywhere infrastructure, which is through the Epic system. We receive pretty much documentation from other Epic systems at the time of visit. When a provider is seeing a patient, they can, perform a query using that system. Now, we also use the Florida HIE heavily. We have a relationship with the Florida HIE where we receive ENS or Encounter Notification Services for our patients. So for our patients in Florida, we have notifications that we receive on a daily basis. And these notifications are identifying encounters when a patient is seen at an emergency room or an inpatient visit at another hospital connected to the network. We would receive a notification the following day for that patient, which is then goes to a pool of care coordinators. So this information allows us to then follow up with the patient and provide better care with, their condition or with, the episode that they had where they were admitted or in an emergency room. It just gives us that extra information, allowing us to follow up where, A, we might have received that information. Well, we might not have received that information previously, or we would have received it in more of a delayed manner otherwise. Now, we are also a sender of data to the Florida HIE, so we are able to send information on, if, again, a patient presents to our hospital. We would send that ADT or admission information to the Florida HIE, allowing the same reciprocation of information to other hospitals and other health networks that are participating with Florida HIE.
And I think I need to make the distinction, though. Do you get that information? Do you get your ENS information, Encounter Notification Service? Does it get consumed or integrated into your EHR, or do you still use it as a standalone system?
So currently, we're receiving the reports in a separate application. They don't flow directly into our EHR system. We are currently working on a project in which we would receive these encounter notifications through direct secure messaging. And again, direct secure messaging is a functionality that allows messaging from EMR to EMR. And, that integration was really pushed through on the Meaningful Use program, where the Measure 5, the Health Information Exchange measure, was something that spurred the use of direct secure messaging. So again, now that is something that we are going to use for another technology where the HIE will be able to send us these encounter notifications through direct secure messaging, and then they will integrate directly into our EMR and flow into a care coordinator's pool so they can follow up, as well into a patient's chart. So that will show a historical view of any encounters had outside of the health system. And the nice part is they will integrate into a list of encounters for the patient. So we will have a complete timeline of any episodes of care or any encounters that happened not only inside but outside of our organization. Again, giving the clinician a more complete picture of the patient's health history.
Well, and I think that, is the ultimate goal, to be able to have that complete picture of that patient's information, either directly by information from your system, other systems, and even patient-generated information as well. And I was glad to hear you talk about the patient-generated information, because that is also a component of the Stage 3 meaningful use requirements, is allowing for that information to be uploaded. But I think also just the recognition that there's some pretty good information out there, either through the home monitoring programs, patients just recording information through some APIs that they can wear, some wearables, that sort of thing. So it just really is kind of all coming together to make that more complete patient information. How do you see, how do you see this kind of evolving over the next several years? We've definitely come a long way. We still have a long way to go. But kind of what do you see as the vision and how this will kind of morph over the next, say, 5 years?
So I would say, the changes already happened. We're seeing, in general in healthcare, the move from a volume-based care to value, where we want to provide better, more valuable care to our patient instead of, seeing them when they're only sick. So we want to see them all the time. So that's going to really, have organizations have to move on population health very quickly. And your population health program is going to be successful if you have a lot of information coming in. So this information that we're receiving from the Florida HIE, it can be a lot, and organizations can be inundated with it at times. But I think a successful population health program will help you find the value in that data. So whether it's seeing that, okay, this patient has 10 encounters on the first week of May every year, that there might be a problem with seasonal allergies. It's just really being able to make sense of all the data that we receive. I think that's really going to be the future. So if we have, again, this short window with a provider, how do we know that we're going to be showing them the most important data during that window? Again, with just a short time to see the patient, we want to make sure that, they see the most important encounters, not the last 100, but the 10 most important. So I definitely see that being a big part of it. Now, we also saw the growth of the patient portal, I'd say exponentially, and this interaction back and forth with patients and messaging. I see that being a very big part of moving forward, because that is really an avenue to a patient when they're not in our office. Our organization is using it now to have medication updates, allergy updates. Patients can enter this into the patient portal. And then when they're seen by the provider back in the office at their next visit, we can then reconcile that information with the chart. So again, just maintaining that streamline of communication with the patient is currently a big thing, but it's going to continue to be big moving forward.
Let me just ask you, because of your experience, two measures going back specifically to the meaningful use requirements that we hear a lot of challenges from is the patient engagement, that patient portal use, and that health information exchange, which you kind of mentioned about using direct secure messaging. We've got just a few more minutes to kind of give us some, if you were trying to help one of your colleagues overcome some of the challenges, what were some of the tips that you would give for patient portal use and that health information exchange meaningful use measure?
So first, let me talk about the health information exchange measure. I think that this one can be one of the most challenging, I would say, in getting traction and success with meaningful use. Now, on the hospital side, we saw success in connecting with our referring partners. So we were able to work with practices in the community that were going to be referring to our specialty clinics, and really, kind of drive the value to them, saying, okay, we'll be able to receive your direct secure referrals and your direct secure messages and your continuity of care documents through HIE when you do want to refer to our health system. On the contrary, we also had a value for Nemours that we have to send these out from our hospital, as well as our referring providers. So we had this same type of use case where, okay, if you're going to send to our clinic and send our providers these direct secure messages to refer to us, then we would like to list your direct addresses in our hospital system and our other system, so that when we refer, we can send these same continuity of care documents to you. but also when we discharge from the ED or inpatient areas, we can send a summary of care or an admission document to the same provider using this system. I'd say the first barrier is, trying to find the direct addresses. So, whether you're looking for a directory or just, looking for some outreach, I'm sure there are contacts within the agency that might be able to help you get some of these direct addresses. But that's really the first step. I'd say then, contacting your trading partners and making sure that they're online and A, that they're able to receive the documentation. And then B, kind of finding out the value proposition for the referring clinic or the other party. What do they want to receive? Do they want to receive post-visit documentation back? Or are they just looking for an avenue to send these referrals and summary of care documents to? With the patient portal, I would say, I mentioned earlier finding the value for the patient, but also finding the value for the provider. Is there any information that the provider needs, clinical in that matter, that they could have before the time of the appointment that the patient might be able to provide through this messaging avenue? Whether it be an update on their condition, how they're feeling today, if they have a fracture, for example, if it's feeling good, if they're having an asthma episode. So I think, the providers have to sometimes get a little creative in understanding the information that they want to receive, as well as the care teams ahead of the visit or using it as a follow-up for after the visit. Definitely these simple use cases are a way to spur the messaging and getting the response back from the patients.
I've heard definitely that follow-up is a big push or a big selling point of the patient portal, is having quicker follow-up or being able, from a patient perspective, being able to kind of reach out. Hey, you talked about this. I need a little more information. I got a question about my medicine. And so we also hear, too, that every member of the care team really has to promote the value of the patient portal and how it can be used to really kind of bridge that gap of communication a lot of times. So those are really good tips. Okay, Chris, I saw that we had some questions come in. Paul, do you have anything that you kind of want to wrap up with before we take some of the questions?
No, I would say that, if you are struggling with some of the measures for meaningful use, it can be a little bit of a challenging journey. I wouldn't say give up, keep it going. It's worth, participating and continuing to push because in the end, it does provide value to the patients. And also it's going to give, better care in the end to everyone if they're engaged into their own health and their own health record.
And just to kind of reiterate what Paul said at the beginning, and he's even said again now, is all of this is just a change in philosophy, a change in how healthcare is delivered, a change in how we as patients view how healthcare is delivered. So I really am encouraged that I'd say another 5, 10, maybe 15 years, this is just how things are done, and we don't have to address challenges and we don't have to address the problems because it's just what we expect both as a healthcare provider and as a patient as well. Just to cover one more question, I know that in Florida we pay 255 year 6 payments. So if you're familiar with the program, you can have up to 6 years worth of payments. So we've had 255 providers actually complete all 6 years of the program. So they did push ahead. We're continuing to make program payments. Sometimes we get the question of, I thought the program ended. I can no longer participate. As long as you've received at least one payment through the program, you can continue participation, and we hope that you will push ahead. We've made over 17,000 payments since the program has begun, and like I said, about 255 of those have received all 6-year payments. So we're still open for business. We're still open to help you address some of these challenges and definitely understand the program requirements as we move forward. All right, so what kind of questions do we have, Chris?
Yeah, sure, Kim. Here's one. With the higher adoption of technology in healthcare settings, how are healthcare providers preparing for competing priorities? This could be such as screen time, which is a provider having to view a device, versus the patient care time where they're actually interacting with the patient. How are they preparing for that competition?
Interesting question. I know that I had mentioned a little bit of that challenge earlier, and I would speak from the technology side that really trying to limit that screen time is important. I know that I had mentioned that, these providers are inundated with data, external data in particular, and really, want to maximize that face-to-face time with the patient. I know within our system, we are trying to make sure that the most important data is, again, at the eyes of the clinician, at that time of the patient, or even before when they see the patient. So they have that important information to review during chart prep, or we're integrating that data within the standard views of the patient's chart so that they don't have to click all over to find it. It's really going to be one view where they can see everything within the EMR. So I'd speak from my perspective. I think it's, giving the provider the most valuable information to review during that window, but also the provider must identify what is the most important information for me during this time frame. I know we all wear Fitbits and smartwatches, but you have to think that, yes, you're collecting data every day on the amount of steps that you have, but really, how much value does that information provide to your provider?
Great. Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's true. We're all figuring out how to juggle technology versus living our everyday lives, and that's no different for providers who have more technology available to them. I think we got a couple minutes left, so we have time for one more question. Veronica's asking, where can we find more information on electronic medical records? I do have a link to the AHCA site on this last slide, but Kim, do you know where folks might be able to find some more information?
We definitely have our AHCA website. We have a lot of resources linked off of our website, both to the national level as well as other resources that we have found to be very useful. If you have specific questions about participating in our EHR Incentive Program, like I say, our EHR Incentive Program, we'll be glad to schedule kind of office hours with you and walk you through the program requirements as well as the meaningful use measures as well. But all of that contact information can be found off the link that Chris is providing.
Great. Well, on that note, I think we can wrap up. It looks like we've got all our questions answered. For anyone who might have an additional question, if you visit the link there, you can email us anything after the fact. For those of you who missed this at the beginning, I'm going to be sending out the slides as well as a link to the recording of today's presentation. Just want to remind everyone that we're going to have our last webinar tomorrow. It's going to be about the floridahealthfinder.gov website and how that's bringing healthcare quality and pricing information to Floridians so that they can make informed decisions about their own healthcare. Kim and Paul, thank you both for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much. And Paul, good luck.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me, everyone.
Great. Everyone who joined as an audience member today, thanks for your participation, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
Goodbye, guys.